The stand that the modern Olympics represent the revival of the ancient Olympic Games occupies a central place in modern Olympic mythology. Pursuant to it, Pierre de Coubertin was granted the title of revivalist. Coubertin's attitude towards Hellenic civilization was identical to that of European colonial invaders towards ancient civilizations. Unlike those who looted material riches, Coubertin looted ancient spiritual heritage, which has its genuine value only in the framework of the civilization it was created in. The very usage of the term Olympic Games represents desecration of ancient culture. Coubertin uses the term not because he was inspired by ancient spiritual heritage, but because it seemed to him of festive character. In a bid to deprive men of the possibility to confront the established world, Coubertin omits from Hellenic culture, the spiritual cradle of Western civilization, everything that inspires men to raise quintessential questions about his human existence, the world, and man's attitude towards it. The Hellenic macrocosm abounds in deities, symbolizing not only the diversity of living forms, but also that of the physical, emotional, spiritual, and intellectual being of man. Coubertin removed from Olympus all gods who question his rigid utilitarian view of the world and his positive man who is an embodiment of that world. What's most important, Coubertin discarded the freedom-loving impulses of Hellenic culture, including not only the Prometheus myth, but also the critical thought which called into question the basic relations and values the world was based on. Freedom-loving argon is true quintessence of Hellenic humanism. One of the most significant tasks of modern Olympism is to pull up the freedom-loving roots of antiquity and to do away with the freedom-loving traditions of mankind and the freedom-loving dignity of man. The commitment to an idealized past as a source of true values is the most significant bond between antiquity and Coubertin's Olympic idea. The Olympic Games are one of the deified threads introducing order into the chaos of events, unraveling in the shade of Kronos' hill, which is a symbol of permanence in the set and perpetual Olympic times in which there is no future. Coubertin himself insists on the preservation of the sacred rhythm of the holding of the Olympics, but the modern Olympic idea is a cult of the existing world, and as such it is devoid of spontaneity and sacredness. At the same time, the Olympic Games are a festival of spring and youth, signifying the regeneration of the vital force of capitalism, and their sacred rhythm is a symbolic expression of the unbreakable chain of deaths and births. The Olympic Games are a capitalist resurrection. Guided by Kant's positivist philosophy, an idea of a Western committee, which is to transform positivist philosophy into a religion of mankind, Coubertin endeavors to establish a new church with the Olympic clergy, new dogmatic theology, myths and cult. Coubertin himself says the following about it: "For me, sport represents a religion with a church, dogmas, a cult, but particularly with religious feeling." Coubertin proclaimed the Olympic idea supreme and the only right religion of the modern era, and himself supreme priest of modern paganism. The seat of the International Olympic Committee becomes a new Vatican. The Olympic calendar assumes the role of the Christian calendar, and the Olympic Games become the chief form expressing perpetuity and boundaries of capitalist times. The spectacular Olympic ceremony becomes a mythological image of a happy world at the moment of its devoutness to the spirit governing the world. Going to stadium becomes a substitute for going to church. Physical exercises and athletic competitions become a substitute for ascetic life and Christian prayers, and a rite devoted to the creation of the cult of the existing world. The Olympic movement did not arise from the development of sport, but under the influence of the spiritual climate dominant in Western Europe in the second half of the 19th century, which is an outcome of several factors. At issue here is primarily the Industrial Revolution, which began in the 18th century and reached its peak at the end of the 19th century. It became a basis for the creation of the myth about unlimited possibilities of the development of science and technology, on which rests the Olympic progress, whose essence is expressed in the well-known maxim, faster, farther, stronger. Then of the advancement of monopolistic capitalism and institutionalization of the new centers of economic and political power, endeavoring to place the entire society in the service of its interests for good. The main brunt fell on democratic institutions, which emerged from political strife between progressive bourgeoisie and workers, and the creation of a new totalitarian mechanism of power became much more important, which would be an exclusive political means in the hands of bourgeoisie. The new elite of the rich aspired to craft a universal and global ideology which would follow the progressive spirit of the new times, and which in itself would be analogous to that of aristocracy in the Middle Ages in the form of Christianity. With the institutionalization of sport at the end of the 19th century, a mechanism was devised which was to become the principal ideological club for the establishment of order in people's heads by destroying their critical and reformatory conscience and fashioning the character of a loyal and usable minion.